Many Destiny players either don't have people to consistently play with or they just like to play alone. And listen, I get it. Life gets busy and your buddies might not have time to play with you, or you just enjoy the challenge of low maining an activity. Either way, I set out to find a build that would excel in solo content. And let me tell you, the build we're looking at today does not disappoint. With this Arc Hunter build, you can deal a ton of AoE damage, which lets you clear out pockets of ads. And at the same time, you'll be able to go invisible constantly, so we basically never take damage. And the most incredible part about it is that you simply swap out the exotic and this build immediately becomes a top contender for team-based activities like raids or dungeons. So Guardians, rally your fire team or go in solo as we show off one of the best Arc Hunter builds for PvE content in Destiny 2. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. This Arc Hunter build has been around the block, so I thought it'd be a good idea to test it out in the current meta and see how it holds up. This build is so strong that I'm really thinking about taking this into the Legend version of the Final Shape campaign when it launches. So we have two exotics to choose from. First up, for solo activities, we're taking Assassin's Cowl. With Assassin's Cowl, we go invisible whenever we get a powered melee kill or a finisher. Pretty simple, but very effective. And the second exotic to look at is Star Eater Scales. Simply put, once your super is charged, picking up orbs grants you stacks of Feast of Light, and at 4 stacks, your super does a whopping 70% increased damage. So let's dive into the abilities and lay the groundwork. First up for our super, we are taking Gathering Storm. This super allows you to throw a staff that deals damage in an area over time. This super has to be one of the top contenders for base damage, which is why even when we use Assassin's Cowl, it does pretty decent boss DPS. The great part about it is that it also jolts the target. So if you don't have teammates that are running Arc, you'll simply be helping to output more overall damage. And when it comes to the abilities, the first ability we're taking is Gambler's Dodge, so that dodging near enemies will give back your melee. And that pairs perfectly for your melee, which is Combination Blow. This powered melee allows you to work up stacks of quote-unquote Combination Blow, which max out at 3 stacks. And when you're at 3 stacks, you deal a whopping 309% more damage. In the past, I've recommended Liar's Handshake, and while I do think that build is good, this one excels at solo content, since you can now one-shot almost any target and go invisible continuously. And with Combination Blow, you'll be getting health back on every powered melee kill. And for our grenade, we're taking the Pulse Grenade. It simply just does the most damage, and it's easy to use. So for our aspects, the first one we're taking is Lethal Current. So now we can use our class ability, and on our next melee hit, we'll jolt a target. This allows you to dodge and then melee to wipe out pockets of enemies. And this also makes it so that when you melee a jolted target, you'll apply blind. This can be very helpful for dealing with champs, since you can dodge and that first hit will apply the jolt. Once you melee them again, they'll be blinded, so you can easily take them out. And the second aspect we're choosing is Flow State. Killing a jolted target makes you amplified. And being amplified helps with numerous things, but the main one being that while we're dodging, we're gaining an additional 66% damage reduction. So this means after that melee kill, you'll gain invisibility. You'll want to dodge near targets anyway to get that melee charge back. So you'll also just be taking less damage while you're invisible. And it's just another way to help out with survivability. And since we are on a melee build, when it comes to the fragments, it's a no-brainer that we're going to take Spark of Resistance, so that now when you're surrounded, you take 25% less damage, which does stack with the 66% damage reduction while you're dodging. And then I also like to pair that with Spark of Feedback. Now when you take melee damage, gain a stacking 75% damage bonus to your melee that lasts until your next melee or 5 seconds. Meaning if you have Combination Blow times 3 and you take melee damage, your next melee will deal 615% more damage. And this is huge for taking out mini bosses or champs. And since we will be using the Pulse Grenade, I like to take Spark of Magnitude to increase its duration and inherently its overall total damage output. And the last fragment depends on your weapons. If you plan on taking arc weapons, Spark of Discharge is huge, since every third arc weapon kill on normal enemies grants you an Ionic Trace. And this ramps up to every 2 kills when killing yellow bar enemies. Plus, it's guaranteed an Ionic Trace whenever you kill a mini boss. And since there's no cooldown, just by using your arc weapons, you're generating a ton more of ability energy. The other option is Spark of Ions, so that killing a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. This does have a 10-second cooldown, so you can't abuse it. But if you plan on using your melee more often, your melee jolts targets. So it kind of depends on if you plan on using your melee more or your weapons more. If you plan on using weapons, go with Spark of Discharge. And if you plan on using your melee, go with Spark of Ions. So now that you know the logistics, let's talk about how to properly play this build. The first thing I like to do is weaken an enemy with my weapon. That way I can use a powered melee to get that kill and get our first stack of Combination Blow. With no stacks of Combination Blow, your powered melee is fairly weak, so this just makes it a little bit easier. Then I immediately dodge to get my melee back. We then use our powered melee to gain another stack, and continue that until we're at 3 stacks. Once at 3 stacks, we continue that cycle of meleeing and dodging, melee and dodging, melee and dodging. The whole time you'll be ducking in and out of invisibility and gaining health plus jolting targets. The thing to look out for is that on your first melee after dodging, you create an arc explosion. And while that's powerful, if the target doesn't die to the melee hit, but it does die to that explosion, it technically doesn't count as a melee kill. So you get your powered melee back and it doesn't give you a stack of combination blow. So if this happens, just find another target to melee and gain that stack. The thing is, since Assassin's Cowl only provides invisibility, which is super handy for solo content, if you want to take this into a raid or dungeon, you just have to swap out for Star Eater scales. That way you can use the same gameplay loop, with the main difference being you're not going invisible, but instead you're dealing a ton more boss damage with your super. So let's talk about ways to improve the build. So taking a look at our stats. First up, we're going for resilience, and I'm shooting for 100. Since we use this in solo play and we have ways to gain health, we want to make sure we can survive long enough to get that melee kill to get back that health. So having that extra 30% damage resistance is helpful. After that, I like to shoot for 100 discipline. Our melee recharges our dodge and vice versa. So strength and mobility are kind of useless. So after we get 100 in resilience and discipline, I like to go for a mix of recovery and intellect to help with survivability and using our super more often. When it comes to the armor mods, taking a look at the helmet, I like to take Harmonic Siphon so that rapid arc weapon kills will create orbs. I typically like to run arc weapons, so this just means more super energy and more ways to use orbs. And after that, I like to take Dynamo so that dodging near enemies gives us a bonus to super energy. Plus, I like to pair that with Hands On so that melee kills gives a bonus to super energy. And since we want to dodge near enemies and then get melee kills, this gives us 2 ways to take advantage of that. When it comes to the gauntlets, the first one I like to take is heavy-handed. The melee is the base of this build, so now every 10 seconds we'll create an orb on a powered melee kill. So I also like to pair that with impact induction so that powered melee damage will grant us grenade energy. This can only proc once every 7 seconds, though it will help get our grenade back to deal even more AoE damage. And after that, I like to take harmonic dexterity. Being amplified gives us increased reload speed, so I like to take dexterity so that we can swap our weapons faster. When it comes to the chest, I'm going for 3 resistance mods, depending on the content. I usually like one of them to be melee resistance mod, so that we take less damage from targets that are close to us. This usually pairs perfectly with a melee build like this one, but pick whichever one suits the situation you're in. When it comes to legs, you mainly want to take 2 weapon surge mods. For me, that means 2 arc weapon surge mods, since I like to run arc weapons, to gain an additional 17% weapon damage. I'm leaving that last slot open to whatever you feel like you're lacking. You could take another weapon surge, you could use the extra mod points for better stats, or you can take something like Innervation to gain more grenade energy whenever you pick up orbs. It's purely up to you and what you feel like your playstyle is. And when it comes to the mark, I'm taking Bomber, so that we gain 12% grenade energy whenever we use our class ability, which we will be continuously dodging near enemies, so it just means more pulse grenades, which also pairs perfectly with our next mod, Reaper, so that whenever we do dodge, our next weapon kill will give us an orb. And since we are dodging so often, I'm also taking Powerful Attraction to make it easy to collect any nearby orbs. As for the artifact, since I'm offering this build as a build for the Final Shape campaign, I can't talk about the seasonal artifact that much since they haven't released what's going to be in it yet. But until then, you can take Wish into Being to create more orbs for this season. When it comes to the weapons, for the kinetic slot, you have 2 main options. If you're running double special, something like Incisor, the Strand Trace Rifle, or Tuska the Boar, which is a waveframe grenade launcher, will give you good ammo economy while dealing good damage. But if you aren't running double special, I really like something like Scatter Signal as a heavy-hitting fusion with controlled burst. Or you could take a sniper to help you out with long-range targets and boss damage. Again, it kind of depends on the situation you're going to be in, so pair up your special with whatever suits your situation. For the energy slot, I mainly like to take an arc weapon here. Indebted Kindness with Volt Shot is fantastic for both ammo economy and damage. Or you could take Cold Heart, which will create even more ionic traces and gain back a ton of grenade energy. But if you want a primary, I love Centrifuge for this, with the ability to create blinding explosions on kills when you're fully charged, plus it can auto reload by running. You can easily blind a group, sprint towards them to reload, all while having a free melee kill because they're blinded. It's honestly so perfect for a melee build, since we can now get up close without having to worry about dying. For the heavy weapon, it really depends on the scenario you're in. If you're solo, a machine gun like Song of Iryu is fantastic for ad clear and decent boss damage. but the Wendigo is a great grenade launcher that can deal some pretty decent damage when you're solo. But if you are running in a team, something like Crux Termination or Hothead can be nice if you have someone with Galley. This build provides an immense amount of survivability and ad clearing potential, making it perfect for solo content. Or you can simply swap to Star Eater scales, and now you have a build that's fantastic for boss DPS. Either way you run it, this is a top-notch build that still holds up to this day as being one of the best hunter builds. Remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations, tweak your loadouts to suit your playstyle, and never stop honing your skills. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below what you might change or how you'd improve the shocking assassin build. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Luckymec signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.